Hey everyone, it's the evening of July 1st, 2025, and free agent frenzy has come and gone, and the Montreal Canadiens were active today with trades, signings, and departures. A lot more action that we get to normally see on a July 1st. So, batten down the hatches. There was even a retirement, which we'll talk about in a second. It's time to drop the puck on Montreal Hockey Talk. Hey everybody, Kosta here once again for Montreal Hockey Talk, and before we start with today's topics, got to talk a little bit about Bob McKenzie. Earlier today, Bob McKenzie announced his retirement, full-time retirement that is, from TSN, and there's a lot of things that we take for granted these days that Bob created. Free Agent Frenzy, Trade Center, the NHL draft shows, the draft rankings, all that good stuff. Is because of things that Bob did, whether it was with the Sporting News or with TSN. We have a lot to be thankful for to that man. He's been a cornerstone of the World Juniors and their coverage there. He has been paramount in the draft and, of course, Free Agent Frenzy and Trade Center. He's the original NHL insider. So he's giving the information that we normally pass on to everybody that listens to our podcast. So on behalf of all of us who do this for fun or for money or whatever you do the podcast for, Mr. McKenzie, enjoy your retirement, and don't let James Duthie beat you at golf, please. Now, let's talk a little bit about what happened today as far as free agent frenzy was concerned. And it started early with the Montreal Canadiens with a trade that people expected, but not for the player that it happened with. And that is the Montreal Canadiens trading Logan Mailloux to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for Zachary Bolduc. Now, Bolduc, a Quebec native, has a very good offensive upside. He scored 19 goals last season, and, he came in fourth in rookie scoring. So he's going to add a little bit of offensive punch while he's already become better in his offensive game, and that's reflected by his plus 20 rating. Not something you normally see from a forward, or at least a rookie forward that scores 19 goals. Oftentimes you see them make mistakes, give away the puck. You know how it is. We've seen it with the Canadiens oftentimes where, players will give away the puck at the offensive blue line, creating chances for the opposition going the other way. Well, got to give a lot of credit to the St. Louis Blues coaching staff, because that's not how Zachary Bolduc learned to play hockey. In fact, Bolduc, I believe, is the last player in the queue to score back-to-back 50-goal seasons. In his case, he was playing for Simon Gagné in Quebec, in the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League. So he's got the ability to put the puck in the back of the net. He's really, really good as far as skating is concerned. He's getting better in his own zone. So there's a lot of good, yes things that we look at. Now, if you look at the graphic, they've listed him as a center, but he's played primarily on the wing, whether it's left or whether it's right. Whether or not the Canadiens decide to put him at center is another story. It may very well be just an experiment. But overall, I think Bolduc is going to start with the Canadiens on the wing to be able to give a little bit more offensive punch to the lineup. Now, Bolduc coming in, and of course, Logan Mailloux going out. Mailloux, we all kind of knew the rating was on the wall a little bit because he was being pushed out. The acquisition of Noah Dobson, the development of David Reinbacher, the play of Lane Hudson, Caden Gooley, Jaden Struble getting re-signed, etc. The writing was on the wall. And whether or not it had anything to do with his past, let's just face it. This kid took it on in the chin, right? He took it in the chin and he cleaned up his act, apologized for what he did, took all the consequences, including a year of being unable to play. He told the Canadiens he didn't want to be drafted. They drafted him anyway because Marc Bergevin listened to nobody. He ended up being the last pick of the first round, or 31st pick of the first round a couple of years in 2021. So, there was no real risk for the Canadiens at that point, of the draft, but it did draw a lot of negative attention to the team. And, it's been a few years since then, and Mailloux has turned out to be a very good defenseman. Very solid in his own zone. He's got that meanness that people are saying is missing from Noah Dobson's game, but they both have a very heavy shot. They both have the ability to move the puck up the ice. Dobson a little bit better of a skater, but they're kind of close as far as what they can do on the ice. So now, from what I've heard, Dobson needs to clean up his game from the hash marks back, which is something that I know Stefan Robida is going to work with him nonstop on. But by and large, it really didn't give Mailloux much space in the Canadiens lineup. So good for him going to St. Louis. He's going to get a chance to play at the NHL level and develop. Now, obviously, we don't want him to do anything good, especially against the Canadiens. But, we do wish him the best of luck because after everything that kid's been through with a mistake that he made at 19 years old, I think he kind of deserves a break. That brings us to the next signing, which is the signing of Kahkonen, the goaltender. And you're going to say, what? The Canadiens signed a goalie for what? Well, it does make a lot of sense because the Canadiens do need a little bit of goalie depth in the organization that's functional, right? They're not going to bring up the goalie from the Kelly Cup winning Trois-Rivières Lions to come all the way up possibly to the NHL in one season. Could he make it to the AHL level? Possibly, but with Fowler there and expecting Kahkonen to start there, I mean, that's going to be a little tough. But that being said, you look at the Canadiens goaltending right now, you've got multiple signed for another 2 years. You've got Dobesh, most likely going to get, he's been qualified, so he'll most likely sign with the Canadiens again. Kahkonen is kind of a guarantee in case Dobesh decides to, not take the offer sheet and do something else. And that's his prerogative, right? But, I expect Dobesh to come back. He's in a good position as far as the Canadiens is concerned. So whether, if he looks around, he may be able to find another seat. But whether or not he gets a starting position or what he may be looking for, I don't know. But the Canadiens needed to protect themselves, and that's what this Kahkonen deal does. It's not a lot of money, despite what some say. There was a chat earlier today that I was involved with on social media where they were saying that $1.15 million is too much for a backup goaltender. And I'm thinking, hang on a second. You take a look around, and, Jake Allen just signed for 3 years with the Devils at 1.85. And 1.15 is kind of, just maybe $400,000 above the league minimum. So it's not a whole lot of money, for a guy who's got a little bit of experience at the NHL level. He does need to clean up his game because if you take a look at the stat sheet that I put up here, he played one game last year with the Avalanche and he got lit up. He spent all of his season in the American Hockey League, which is why everybody's expecting him to start in the American Hockey League. But he may very well surprise. You never know. Change of scenery, work over the summer. Goalies can change in a heartbeat from one day to the next. So we'll see what Kahkonen brings to the table. But one thing is for certain. He can be a help to Jacob Fowler in the American Hockey League if that's where he ends up. Fowler could use a little bit of a veteran presence to be able to show him the ropes, guide him in the right direction, and teach him what it is to be a professional, right? Because the kid, after all, joined the Rocket last year after finishing up his university, right? So, let's see. I'm not going to really read too much into it, but the fact that it's only $1.15 million, it speaks to, a very smart signing by the Canadiens, something we haven't really said that often. Normally the Canadiens overpay to get guys here. That's not the case when it comes to this Kahkonen deal, so we'll see where it comes up. He was highly touted when he got drafted by the Minnesota Wild. So, let's see if he can get back to form. And one thing that also came up on social media that I need to clear up, because a lot of people are saying the $1.15 million doesn't count against the Canadian salary cap. Well, it does. The minimum contracts amount that doesn't get assigned to the cap is 1.075. So this is about another $40,000 higher than where that minimum is, or $400,000 higher, I should say. But no, 40. Nope. Hang on. 40? Yeah, $40,000 higher. My math sucks, by the way. So there it is. If it was at 1.075, then Kahkonen would not count against the cap. But anything above 1.075 does count against the cap, to make it clear, in case anybody had any questions about that. Moving on. Another signing the Canadiens made today was picking up Samuel Blais. Now, Blais, of course, another Quebecer, signed a one-year deal for $775,000. And Blais is an interesting case. He's not an overly large kid. If I take a look at his height, where do we have it here? We don't have it here. Blais not a very big kid. When I take a look at it, well, he is. He's 6'2". He had 7 points last season in 53 games, minus 11. But the one thing that he brings to the table that the Canadiens need a little bit more of is grit at forward. Sure, they've got Josh Anderson. Sure, they've got, Brendan Gallagher. But Gallagher's a little bit older. Anderson's a little bit older. So you need to get a little bit more Sandpaper in your lineup. And Blais can bring now. Now, whether or not he starts with the Canadiens is going to be up to him and how he does in camp. But overall, given the fact that he played 53 games last year with, that's 2 years ago. Excuse me, I got to look at my stats. I played 53 games 2 years ago with the Blues. He's got a little bit of NHL experience. People say that, what's his nickname again? They call him Sammy, but, they say he's extremely gritty. He's a guy that loves to hit, and he's entertaining as hell. That's how he's been described. And that's something the Canadiens need. Now, he's got some scoring pop. It's sporadic, but, it's there. And, he could be that third, fourth line guy that brings energy, which is something, again, the fourth line didn't really give to the Canadiens all that much last season. But he's been inconsistent. But again, he's young. He's only 29 years old. So, he's still got a lot of hockey in front of him. So, and with some good coaching and a good locker room, he could very well become what the Canadiens need as far as, that guy that pops somebody in their own zone to be able to separate man from puck. But overall, another good young player joining the Canadiens, doesn't cost very much. And at the end of the day, that's all we can ask for. Now, of course, today being Free Agent Frenzy Day, we got to say goodbye to a few players. And, that it's a yearly thing almost with the Canadiens. But these guys were actually held on to because Suzuki asked for them to be held on to for the playoff run last year. And, the captain, didn't think he was hurting the team all that much. And the fact that he asked the general manager to do that speaks volumes towards what he believed as far as those players were concerned. And it showed. Dvorak finished the season extremely strong. Armia had a wrist injury, and so it limited what he was able to do on the ice, but he still contributed as far as being able to kill penalties and such. And he's a player that we're going to miss because if you remember, he was a huge part of that 2021 Cup run. So, here they are as far as where they signed. So Armia signed with the LA Kings 2 years at $2.5 million. Not really much of a surprise there because of the fact that Mark Bergevin, the assistant GM in LA, does know Armia very, very well. Surprisingly, the next one, Dvorak's contract from the Flyers, I think everybody's going to be looking at Daniel Briere going, what the hell are you thinking? Sure, it's just 1 year, but $5.4 million? That's a lot of money to pay somebody like Dvorak. I don't know why you would offer that much. You probably could have had him somewhere around 4.5, but, they were in a hurry to sign him. I don't know. Who knows how many people were actually knocking on Dvorak's door. But at the end of the day, $5.4 million for Dvorak is an overpayment. And so, good luck to Briere in trying to justify that contract over this next season. And the other one that left, which didn't surprise very many people, is Michael Pezzetta. The funny part about Pezzetta is that he signed with the Leafs for 2 years at $7.87 thousand per season. But the Canadiens didn't really give him a proper send-off. They made a video for Armia. They put out a thank you graphic for Dvorak, but nothing for Pezzetta. And so I looked at it and I said to myself, why would they do that to somebody who, he did give the Canadiens, a couple of relatively good seasons, and he was a character player. He wasn't anybody that was going to break the bank as far as goals were concerned. He wasn't an overly great fighter. He did have his chippiness. He made a bunch of mistakes last year, which kind of led to them not needing him back. But when you sign with the Leafs, I know the Canadiens aren't going to wish you good luck. And, it kind of reflects poorly. I mean, they did kind of the same thing with Josh Georges when he signed with the Leafs. So, Pezzetta, I'm not wishing you any luck with Toronto. Honestly, I really don't want to see it. But, at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? So, 3 players gone. 3 players brought in. The Canadiens roster kind of taking shape now. Still young, still learning, but kind of getting to where they need to be. And there's no guarantees that Kent Hughes is even finished yet. There may be more moves. We don't know, right? But at the end of the day, we have to be happy with what he's done because everything he's done makes sense, right? Earlier today in his press conference, he kind of told people, well, as a centerman, you're not looking at a guy who's a traditional center. You're looking for a guy that takes faceoffs. That's only where he is when he lines up for the draw. After that, it's F1, F2, F3. That's how hockey's played now. First forward in, second forward in support, third forward high support, that type of thing. So, I get what he's saying, and he's kind of trying to defend Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook in the sense that those guys play center, take faceoffs, but aren't necessarily centers. So, he's trying to defer and deflect a little bit. Are they finished? Are they still looking for a 2C? Probably. But will they get one? We'll continue to look. But, it's day one of free agent frenzy. There's the entire summer. And if something happens, we'll figure it out. And the one thing that everybody forgot about today that wasn't really mentioned all that often was the fact that Habs development camp started today. And so the only guy missing from development camp is the Russian goaltender that they drafted the other day. Arskov is his name. Everybody else, though, is there. So, head down to the Complex Sportif CN in Brossard to get a look at the Canadiens' future. The schedule, they're normally on the ice in the morning, and there's a media opportunity starting at 1 o'clock. So they only skate for about 4 hours a day at development camp. But it's really just a first look at some of the draft picks, some invitees to development camp. And, some of those guys, like I know a kid that got invited to development camp for the Vegas Golden Knights by the name of Remy Jelena, who used to play for the Hawkesbury Hawks. He had a fantastic season in the Q this year, playing 42 games with the Rouen-Noranda Huskies. And so he got an invitation to the Vegas Golden Knights development camp. So some of the kids that are at the development camp for the Canadiens this year, some are draft picks, others are invitees. Those invitees, it's kind of their first and almost last shot at the National Hockey League. So, the development camp is always interesting. There's always good fighting. There's always good speed and a lot of skill. And it's something, if you're jonesing for a little bit of good hockey, head down there, take a look. But it's nice to see these young kids getting their first shake at NHL brand type camps. And the ones that do come out of those camps, the camp runs until July 3rd. And you can find the roster on Canadiens.com. Those kids that are at the camps, a lot of them will get invited to Habs Prospect Camp, where, there's a prospect showcase coming up in September. And then after that, the ones that do extremely well will parlay that into an invitation to Canadiens main camp. So there's a lot going on in the next little while as far as development and those kids are concerned. So it's going to be interesting to see. So again, it's running July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So you got a couple more days to go check out these kids over at the Complex Sportif CN in Brossard, Quebec. Most of the practices run from 8 till noon. Media availability is at 1 o'clock. But, get out there, take a look, enjoy what you see if you're missing hockey right now. And, of course, as I always say, make sure to follow on social. You can find me on X at MTL Hockey Talk, BlueSky at mtlhockeytalk.bsky.social, of course, facebook.com.mtlhockeytalk, and you can also find us on Instagram. Bye for now.